Hello, and welcome to my apparently 6 monthly discussion of why people feel the need to harass George R. R. Martin. Was not planning on talking about this. For those who are unaware, during Worldcon this year, George R. R. Martin was harassed by someone at the event who was kind of shouting out, being like, "You're not going to be around forever. Fucking get on with it," type thing. Unnecessary and crass comments, regardless of anything else. I saw like clips from Bookborn who confirmed she heard from people who were there that it happened, etc. And so for me, I'm like, that's all I need to know. This was a known harasser. It seems like it occurred. It's not cool. This fits with my rationale in terms of the fact that people are overstepping their mark, and I disagree with them wholeheartedly. So I wasn't planning on talking about it. But then I saw the most dog shit article that I've ever seen from a reputable kind of, I mean, I put it in quotation marks, but they're a fucking entertainment. They go to press junkets. They are an existing and within the industry news outlet that reports on things and that puts opinion pieces out. And when I saw this fucking article, my blood boiled, and I was like, I'm gonna have to make a video on it to reply to this dog shit. So, to get it out of the way, just to make my opinions clear, I've done rants on it in the past, but I'll rehash it here for you. I do not believe that George R. R. Martin owes us anything. I am firmly in the camp where I understand being disappointed that an author does not finish their work, and I understand that people put money into it, they pay, etc. However, I do not believe that an author is required to finish their work. There are extenuating circumstances, things happen, these span decades, and as a result, a person can change, fall out of love with their own work, find that they are incapable of finishing it, realizing that the plan that they had is not going to come to fruition the way they thought they did. They don't have the passion anymore, they don't have the confidence anymore, their mental health is struggling, they just don't want to. There are so many things that we do not know. I will also say, I've said this many times, George R. R. Martin does not make it easy for himself, because he keeps on coming out being like, I'm working on it, I'm this far through, oh, I'm actually not, I'm now this far through. He cannot help but give markers that don't exist corporeally, because if they did, it would be finished by now. And he needs to stop coming out and being like, I'm 3/4 of the way through this much of this chapter, and I'm just like, stop talking. Just don't put it out or put it out. So I do understand the frustration. I understand that he does not help himself in parts, but I do firmly believe that in the deliverance of what he has given with the Song of Ice and Fire to date, even just the first 3 books, he could stop at A Storm of Swords, and he has created one of the single greatest arcs in all of fantasy in those first 3 books. I will reread those first 3 books over and over again for the rest of my life, and do not need a page more to feel like I have got enough out of the reading experience. I feel the same with Scott Lynch's Gentleman Bastards. If another page isn't put out, I think it is a great series. I have not read King Killer Chronicle, that's a different story. But for authors who are big, who have not put out their next piece of work, I just find I find a sympathy for them, because especially with George R. R. Martin putting out a series to that level of quality, which also then gets picked up, and to watch what happened with that show, and I can only imagine how crushing it is to not only see an ending to the product that you are currently trying to write and struggling through, also seeing everyone tear it apart, losing confidence 100% in everything that you've done. Like, I just find myself thinking this is a much more nuanced conversation than screaming at someone in public that they're going to die. Nevertheless, I have made suggestions in the past that the thing is, George R. R. Martin has said he does not want anyone else to finish his books. So, lo and behold, no one else should finish his books. That is my opinion. And like I said, I do not think he needs to. I think those first 3 books, Storm of Swords is the greatest fantasy book ever written, in my opinion. It feels like things are constantly unraveling, that I don't have confidence that the series would ever finish in a satisfying way. So, from a personal perspective, I feel no longing for a conclusion that I don't think can resolve everything to the highest quality that the rest of the series has had. And so I feel like the idea of pushing for this ending is going to inevitably backfire on these people. And no one's ever going to be happy with how it turns out. I don't think it's possible for everyone to be happy with how it turns out. So I think there's just so many. It's like being a deer caught in headlights for him, it must be. But in terms of if he has... So this gets on to this article. Let's just go into the article now. I put it in the thumbnail, but here it is. It says, fans have a point. George R. R. Martin should let this acclaimed fantasy author finish Winds of Winter instead. This came out 2 days ago as me filming this. I saw it on the day it came out and had to mentally stop myself from screaming. Let's break it down. The first bit, fans have a point. This comes immediately after George R. R. Martin is publicly harassed, saying that someone should finish the books for him, screaming at him. To put out something that says fans have a point is so incredibly harmful in terms of creating an expectation. I know they're not saying that you should be able to harass this man in public and tell him that someone should finish his work. I understand that. But if you're going to write a fucking news article or an entertainment article, you need to have an awareness of the language you are using, and to put the fact that fans have a point specifically after we see someone harass him in public. It just left the most sour taste in my mouth. Where I'm like, this is the line you want to take? Is being like, oh, that nutter that screamed at someone in public and harassed them. Yeah, they were right. That was baffling to begin with. And then we can get into the meat and potatoes of it. I do not understand how someone being paid to write for an actual reputable entertainment news outlet like Collider can create an article where they say that Brandon Sanderson should finish A Song of Ice and Fire. It's mind-blowing that someone can firstly think that, secondly write it down, and thirdly someone pays them to publish it to the public. I do not fathom how that happened. Someone edited it and went, he's onto something. No one went, your idea is fucking stupid and impossible. It just shows that the community of fantasy, because of the prevalence and the rise and the pop culture element of fantasy through TV shows and films, has created it where people who have no business, evidently, discussing fantasy books are now talking about it on big platforms and guiding the conversation where it's just fucking drivel. Now, I will say, obviously, in this article, they say this moment was a prime example of toxic fan culture. They kind of try to cover themselves. It could be that a different person wrote the headline, in which case that person needs to be spoken to, because it's a terrible choice. So I will say that the author does cover themselves by saying that this was wrong, but I'm making this as a result of it to say that the sentiment was right, just wasn't executed in the best way, which I still think is fucked up. But the central premise, Brandon Sanderson is the biggest author in fantasy right now. because of the fact that George R. R. Martin is not active. Obviously, if George R. R. Martin put out the next A Song of Ice and Fire book, he would blow Brandon Sanderson out of the water in numbers. That's just the way it would be due to adaptations, due to the zeitgeist. He is the biggest author, with Brandon Sanderson as the most popular and highly working. Just the amount of output that he puts out is by far the most active. So let's just break down why this is fucking stupid. Firstly, Brandon Sanderson doesn't even have time to do his own fucking shit. He's got Dan Wells, he's got other people writing inside the Cosmere now, because he doesn't have fucking time. He writes too much to begin with. Whole different video, which will probably be in the cards, but he already does too much. So he doesn't have the fucking time. Secondly, George R. R. Martin, from all understanding, does not vibe with... They don't vibe with each other's work. Brandon Sanderson has said that George R. R. Martin writes so darkly and in such a way that does not work for him personally. So they don't gel together. And George R. R. Martin is definitely not a fan of this turn of hard magic systems. That's a man who loves his soft magic system. And so these things don't mesh. Thirdly, George R. R. Martin has actively seen what happens when someone takes over your work and you don't have full creative control of every decision. So the expectation that he would be like, absolutely. So Brandon Sanderson, who I don't even agree with on most things, I'll let him finish my series. After letting Benioff and Weiss destroy the legacy of the show with what they did in season 8, is dumbfounding to me. So, the whole thing, I just can't believe it was written. George R. R. Martin is busy with other projects. That's a subheading. What the fuck do you think Brandon Sanderson is doing? My response to this whole thing, as I've said, is that I do not believe that Brandon Sanderson definitely doesn't need to put out more work. He's already done enough. That guy's put out a bibliography that would fill the Library of Alexandria again. George R. R. Martin does not owe us anymore. That is my flat, will not be changed opinion. I don't believe that anyone is owed anything by anyone in terms of a creative output, because it is such an unbelievable amount of work, and to create a piece of work that strong as A Song of Ice and Fire takes not only craft level, but also just the mental fortitude of what changed after A Dance with Dragons came out. The overwhelming popularity and boom and the voice. It's comparable to something like Star Wars, where it's like the voice for George Lucas has changed. He has a constant thrumming in his ear, which is every single person in the world discussing his work and what is great and what is wrong with it, why they hate him and why they love him. And that is the same for George R. R. Martin. And people writing in fantasy and sci-fi are not the coolest people. They're not used to being the centre of attention. I can imagine how anxietily crippling it could be, how much it would freeze you to try to continue that story after you have had the experience that he's had after this. Obviously, he has an ability to write. He has written other things. He's written other things inside the same world, because there's less eyes on it. There's less feeling that you are ruining something or that you are destroying something. And so, like, it's not that the man can't write. He just clearly has absolutely stagnated with this particular property. And that has to be because of the overwhelming pressure that exists around it. Which I think, if you cannot understand that, then you have no empathy. You have absolutely no possibility of connecting with feelings. That's just... I have no other idea how you could end up in that position. So, like I said, I will talk about A Storm of Swords till the cow comes home. I love that book. I love A Song of Ice and Fire. I loved the TV show until it fell off a cliff. And I appreciate that world and that story so much. And like I said, I'm aware that George R. R. Martin does not help himself. The guy could do with putting out less blogs that talk about being 3/3 of the way through a 2/3 chapter that's 4/5 complete in the book that's going to take place 6/7 of the way through. I understand that the guy keeps on putting down markers that they're just terrible. They just don't help anyone. We should not be supporting, even if it is an allusion to the idea of harassment, which I think this article's headline is terrible. Secondly, we need to really address the fact that these big entertainment blog article news things are being written by people that have no fucking idea, clearly. But I will, as always, put an addendum on this, that if George R. R. Martin, which he does not have to do, changed his mind, let's put a theoretical out there that he says, actually, I have become more open to the idea that someone will finish Song of Ice and Fire for me. I believe that there is only one person that should be offered it and have the decision on what they want to do. And that is Daniel Abraham. Daniel Abraham is one half of James S.A. Corey, the science fiction duo. He has also authored a few different series. He has authored the Long Price Quartet. He has authored the Dagger and Coin series. He is currently authoring the Kithamar trilogy. That is a man who has been consistently producing for a long time, at the same time as writing the end of The Expanse and writing the beginning of his new series, The Mercy of Gods, which is the, I forget what that series is called, but as James S.A. Corey, he's also been putting out the Kithamar trilogy. He has been publishing himself and in this duo simultaneously, which shows that he has an ability to put out a lot of work that is all of high quality. So that's one element, just to kind of support the idea. Firstly, he's a fantastic writer as well. Long Price Quartet is an incredible series that I will always recommend. I think it's a masterpiece. And a series that bangs on the ending, is able to completely tuck everything in to what you want to resolve the main themes and character arcs. It is a perfect ending, that series, and I will fight everyone, fisticuffs up, to anyone who disagrees with The Price of Spring from the Long Price Quartet being a certified fucking classic. Alongside that, for those that are unaware, Daniel Abraham has also worked on the graphic novel adaptations of what series? Who would have guessed it? A Song of Ice and Fire. If you look at any Daniel Abraham book, it has George R. R. Martin's name plastered on it, giving nice quotations. They have worked together. They have worked on an adaptation of A Song of Ice and Fire. Daniel Abraham and George R. R. Martin clearly must have a good working relationship for Daniel Abraham to be given the keys to adapt for a graphic novel. I just think that it makes perfect sense. Clearly, George R. R. Martin supports Daniel Abraham's voice in being able to translate and work inside of the world of Westeros. Secondly, as opposed to someone like Brandon Sanderson, who has so much going on, he already has to push it to the side and give it to other people. And it's completely insane to think that he would ever have time. Someone like Daniel Abraham, who's handed in his manuscript for the end of the Kithamar trilogy, who's coming to the end of that, then leaves himself in a position to sign on to do something like this, where he could still work under James S.A. Corey and also create something like this. It also, from Daniel Abraham's perspective, puts him in a position where he is an author who, under James S.A. Corey, is a massive name in the science fiction. The Expanse was massive, had adaptations, incredibly big. Whereas him as an individual author has always had kind of smaller outreachings. He has a very loyal fan base, but it is a smaller fan base. If he gets something like A Song of Ice and Fire and finishes that, it would have the same propulsive element as Brandon Sanderson finishing The Wheel of Time. It has just, yeah, it has the ability to propel him into the zeitgeist, for people to discover his old brilliant works, to discover that he is half of James S.A. Corey, and then even increase the expanse and have crossover there. There is a benefit, whereas there is no benefit to Brandon Sanderson finishing another person's series like he did with Wheel of Time, because he's now an established giant author. Daniel Abraham is still in a position where he is an established great writer who does not get the numbers that he deserves in his own work. He gets the numbers in with James S.A. Corey, but the Kithama is wholly underrepresented in terms of readership, at least on Goodreads and stuff. We don't know what sales are like, obviously, but through reviews and everything, he is not the biggest author. So from his perspective, it would still have a benefit if he wished to have that kind of propulsive, eyes on, everyone's watching you, everyone wants to know about you. If that's what he wishes, then it would have a benefit both ways. You know what I mean? I do not think that the series can end well. I do not think that anyone should finish it apart from George R. R. Martin. I support George R. R. Martin's decision to do what he can, and if it doesn't come out, then it fucking doesn't come out. Whatever. I'm just saying, if there is going to be an article like this put forward, you can disagree with me with Daniel Abraham, but at least I think with my reasoning, you could go, oh, I could see how that could happen. But this person putting out an article about Brandon Sanderson finishing George R. R. Martin is dumbfounding how anyone could think that. It would be like asking Rebecca Yarros to finish a Sarah J. Maas series. And I know some people just screamed into the void hearing that, but that is the direct thing, because they're both so incredibly massive that there's no benefit to having that happen. No one would want it to happen, and it just, I don't know. I'm done talking about it. Lots of love to you. Let me know what you think, because George R. R. Martin is a person that everyone always has feelings around. I'm sure there'll be a lot of comments saying that he does need to give us something, which I can understand the frustration and everything. I don't agree, but I can understand the emotion around it. Mainly, I hope people back me up that this article is fucking garbage. Yeah, whatever. Lots of love. Have a nice rest of your day.